Now, this is a speed drawing video of fan art based on a memorable scene from Season 2, Episode 2 of The Owl House, Escaping Expulsion, with unscripted commentary by the artist, me, MC the Toonster. Well, off we go. Now, you're probably wondering why I start out the drawing with these random lines. Well, they're really key in something called perspective, which was something I was kind of going for with this artwork. At the time, I was taking Skillshare classes in storyboarding, and these were the tools needed to help me figure out exactly how it works. It's the lesson we came to. And in doing perspective, I learned that it helps a lot to make boxes based on the squares in the grids. It really helps me determine how big the character should be, along with the drawing assistant tool on the grid. So you see, teen characters like Amity and Luz remain 4 heads tall, but depending on their position, the heads are going to turn out to be a lot smaller. They'd only be the same if they were in the same position. And way in the back we have Amity's parents, the ever-abusive Alador and Odalia. They would be about 5 heads. 5 heads tall and would tower over Amity. Well, maybe not tower, but But from where they're standing, they'd be in this picture, they'd be significantly smaller. Now, the background for this art is very striking, but still, it really helps to sketch it out with basic shapes and stuff. And the shapes for this particular fan art made this simply easy to construct and prepare for the real thing. And in a creative liberty, we have the scene of Amity defending Luz from the Abomaton robot taking place on a stage. Even though in the actual episode, the stage is kind of destroyed and takes place on the floor in front of the stage, but it works fine with it. But it makes for a good use of perspective, where not only does Amity appear to be taller than her parents from where she's standing, but her parents seem on a lower ground in addition to be further away from her. And as usual, I resort to the studio pen and with black ink to make everything stand out. It really makes things like the expressions stand out, pop, really invest the audience in the tone of the scene. And I'm also really impressed with how the hands turned out, especially with Amity. After all, I think a lot of us can agree that hands are one of the most difficult things to draw. And I'd also like to shout out the difficulty of the hair bun on Amity's old look. I know a lot of artists comment on how hard it is to draw. I personally never had that much trouble with it, but you can see that it differs wildly from the sketch differs wildly from the final ink thing. And also when drawing the roots of Amity's old hair, I use the actual color that they are, which is brown. Brown, considering that it blends with her old green color for the color in the actual series. But one thing's for sure, it's certainly a lot easier to draw Amity since she changed her hair in episode 5. of season 2, but that's another topic. Now, when drawing Luz, she's still 4 heads. When she's in this case, when she's sitting on the ground and her legs are bent forward, the height is typically 2 heads, since the legs would be on top. Now, a good thing about Procreate is that it's very helpful, and is that you can actually zoom in on what you're drawing, and it's really helpful when making things from far away. So as you can see, Amity's parents, Odalia and Alador, stand out, but even if the details aren't nearly as pronounced. And it's especially good because if you were to look closely at things way far in the back, like the butterfly that Alador tends to get distracted by, it's probably not very good. And here now is the color phase of the operation, where you give a base color and then paint everything in with the help of clipping masks. And it's certainly beneficial to have a screenshot from the actual episode and show to offer a good palette. And there's that other palette that I always use to get Luz's skin color right. And you can't forget. And I also wanted to make sure I included that blush on her. After all, it's very significant development for Lumity. It was in that moment when we could easily tell that the feelings were mutual, and that they did have a chance of actually becoming canon. And look at where they are now. No, it's not really necessary for me to turn the outlines off, but I often do because I tend to believe that some elements look cool that some color models look cool when you take off the outline. Now, way back here, Now, you're probably wondering why I didn't use a color palette for Odalia. Well, considering that her design is very unique, especially for the designs of what I'm assuming are potion vials on her blouse. I actually did artwork of her prior to the episode airing, when we only had a brief scene of her from the Season 2A trailer to work off of. But honestly, I don't think that's very good. It's also where I got the colors for the Abomaton. It's got a very cool blend to her and stuff. And blend to it and stuff. And there's the shading process. I was working off of a screenshot of the actual episode at the time to really get it right in the scene. Personally, I think this is one of the better instances of shading, and I could really see how it makes certain characters like Amity really pop. It's all in this case, it's accomplished by copying the colors and giving it a very low brightness or very high one for the shadows and highlights, and then I erased them using an airbrush to make them really look, using an airbrush eraser to really make them look more natural. Yeah. But you can still tell that it's pretty difficult for me to figure out exactly how to pull it off. But and it's kind of cool to get That circumstances allow for the automaton to give a pretty decent blow. Now, often when then here's the part where I start adding paint to background elements, like the stage here. These don't actually use outlines so that the characters can actually at least stand out and draw attention more. This climax sure was intense, but imagine if the characters actually did do what they did on a broken stage. And with Procreate's drawing brushes, this background certainly has a pretty unique look to it. Really distinguishes itself from the rest of the characters. And yet, it still looks like a fully functioning factory. Now, one thing I had to admit about this elf is that when putting together the background, I did end up with a bit of an empty space to the left. So this turned out to be a rare instance where I actually cropped the canvas to make it slightly smaller than it did. Just before adding in the MC, the Toonster logo, and calling it complete. And speaking of which, that's how this fan art was put together. And I have to say that it's pretty impressive with how it turned out. It really brings the scene to life. Practically screaming, "Stay away from my Luz," and all that sort of thing. Now, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and follow me, MC the Toonster, on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to learn my full thoughts on the episode Escaping Expulsion, look for a link in the description to my review of it on my blog, MC Toon Reviews. Well, that's it for now. I'll see you in the next video, and stay animated, folks.